Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk about CCR and specifically whether CCR will make you lose money or not, or whether there are factors that actually make the CCR make you lose money, and if these factors actually only affect the CCR or actually affects both the OCR, RCR, CCR, wherever you are. So let's talk about that. So if you're up to date with the real estate market, you confirm come across articles such as the most unprofitable transactions in Singapore, be it in 2024 or 2025, and you read through the articles and you start to see a pattern. Majority of it is in the CCR. So majority of them, or a lot of people have this mindset that, oh, you buy a property in CCR, sure lose money on. But let's see whether that's the case or whether there are other factors that allow or make CCR lose money, and whether these factors apply not just in CCR, but whether it applies in the OCR or RCR region. So if you see articles such as Stack, 99.co, HProp, you start to see how much these CCR projects lose money. Some can be up to 2.5 million, $3 million, $1 million, which is a lot of money, and it actually scares people or have this bad connotation around CCR projects. But let's see what the factors are that makes them lose so much money. So I have deduced two factors as to why CCR sure lose money. The first factor is the demand factor. The second factor is actually a product problem. So we'll be going through each and every one of them step by step. So for the demand factor, you have low affordability, huge price gap, social advancement, significant price disparity, weak exit strategy, and decentralization that actually killed CCR, but is debatable. So let's run through that later on. Product problem, you have the lack of family provisions, the inefficient layout, lots of unusable spaces, and also all the odd shapes. So let us first move on to demand factor. So before we start, we need to understand the significance of holding a property in Singapore. Back then, when you hold a property in Singapore, that property will make up majority of your net worth. What this also means is that property is a necessity, because no person with a common sense is willing to spend 70% of their net worth on something that they don't need. So with that said, affordability comes to play, because even though something is a necessity, you still can only spend within your means. So understanding that, we look at the history of the CCR and why CCR is more expensive than the OCR and RCR. Because in the 1850s, these are where all the businesses are taking place, where all your expats or your merchants, your British, your Chinese, your Arabics, this is where they conduct their businesses. So this made the area very expensive. Why? Because all the wealthy merchants will want to live within the business of trade, so close to the proximity of where they conduct their business. And this led to a bidding war, where the wealthy fight with the wealthy with money, in turn increasing the price of the location, making it hard to reach for the average local. So in the next graph, you can see that it is true, be it in the new launch or in the resale, the CCR will always be more expensive than the OCR and the RCR. And because of this huge price gap, it becomes a bottleneck for social advancement, meaning to say if you live in the RCR or OCR now, you find it hard to upgrade to the CCR because it is too far to reach. It is not within your means. Then you cannot upgrade to the next status to the CCR region. So you can see the average PSF for the CCR region is significantly higher than the average PSF of the RCR and the OCR, be it in the new launch or resale, where in 2025, the CCR to RCR price gap is 27%, and the CCR to the OCR is almost 51%. So if you piece all this together, where your property is a necessity and people will only spend within their means, that means that the CCR is very unaffordable for the majority of locals in Singapore. So if the majority of the locals in Singapore cannot afford a property in the CCR, then where is the demand coming from? The demands are coming from external factors such as the foreign investors or foreigners. But if you pay attention to the graph, you start to see that the CCR price cap starts to narrow. And this is where actually decentralization had a part to play, even though it did kill the CCR region temporarily. But we'll go through more about that in the later slides. So here you can see some projects where the external demand is significant, where the foreigners and the PRs and the companies made up to 30% or more than 30% of the demographic of the project. And the interesting thing is, these projects with the demographic of foreigners and PRs being 30% or more than 30%, they have one thing in common. They start to decline in appreciation, meaning you lose money. But does that mean that the demographics of foreigners and PRs, if it's more than 30%, your project will start to decline? The answer is no, because there are other factors that come to play at the same time that causes these projects to lose money, which I'll go through the next factor now. So now let's go through decentralization and how decentralization actually killed the CCR temporarily and maybe the saving grace for the CCR area. What is this decentralization strategy? Essentially, it is this. Singapore government saw that the existing infrastructure in the CCR is getting overcrowded due to limited spaces and limited supply, but the demand was still high. The demand for offices and business trades to take place in the CCR is higher than the supply. So the Singapore government did a very clever thing. What they did was to provide more of this infrastructure across Singapore, not just in the central core region. What that did in return was spread the demand to different parts of Singapore. So this helps to decentralize the demand for the central core region to other parts of Singapore, in the OCR and also in the RCR. And this plan has been ongoing since 1991. And if you can see from this map, the Singapore government has actually allocated job nodes across the country. This is to reduce the traffic congestion towards the city and give more businesses options to bring more jobs closer to the home. That in return will reduce the oversubscribed demand to the core central region. So these nodes are located in the west side of Singapore, to the north, to the east side of Singapore. Such examples are the Woodlands Gateway, the Woodlands Central, and also the Jurong Lake District and Jurong Innovation District. Then you have your Changi cities where they plan to have a business park and also all the local hubs located within this area. So not only are they allocating all the job nodes and business nodes across Singapore, they're also building residential units nearby to sustain this work-play-living concept. Or the Greater One North where they implement residential units near the commercial or business nodes, so they have this lifestyle of working closer to home for convenience sake. And in this next slide, you can see all the business nodes that the Singapore government has allocated. So mainly are located in the Western Gateway, the Northern Gateway, and the Eastern Gateway. So as a result of this decentralization, did it create demand for the rest of the regions of Singapore? Yes, it did. Because not only is the RCR or OCR prices appreciating, it is actually closing the price gap between the CCR. So in this slide, you can see I have overlaid all the new launches, indicative PSF, all in this allocation of the business nodes that the Singapore plan for the decentralization. As you can see, the PSF has increased. You have Parktown residents at Tampines ranging for 2.1 PSF to all the way to 2.6 PSF. You have Clementi, Alta, at 2.2 PSF all the way to 2.8 PSF. You have RCR, Mayor Blue, hitting above the 1.5 PSF mark. All this shows that the demand for this RCR and OCR has increased, and because of this, you can see that the gap to the CCR has become smaller. But to know how much smaller the gap has occurred in the CCR, I'll let you know further into the video. But for now, let's talk about the product problem. So one of the issues is the lack of family provisions. This is due to the characteristics of the project itself. One being the project itself allowing or encouraging families to stay within the project. As you can see in this unit mix, almost 72% are catered to 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. This is located in the CCR region at OUE Twin Peaks. As you can see, it is not orientated to families in mind. Another example, at Scotts Tower, you can see almost 90% is allocated for 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms. As a person with a family, do you think a 1-bedder or 2-bedder is enough? Obviously not. The bare minimum is at least a 3-bedder. But as you can see for these projects, 1-bedder, 2-bedder being the majority of the unit mix, does not encourage families to live within the project itself. Now let's dive in deeper. Look at the floor plans. So if you compare the floor plans from the OUE Twin Peak and also the Scotts Tower, what can you see? The over provision of bay windows, AC ledges, and also the balcony spaces, it is excessive. Being excessive is one thing, but now you have to pay for these excessive provisions of bay windows, balcony spaces, and AC ledges, where majority of the time they are unusable spaces. Where layouts like this, where you're paying for AC ledges, big balcony spaces that you hardly use all the time, and bay windows that does not help to provide efficiency for the layout, does that mean it's a good buy? No, because when people buy a property, it is a necessity. So it's only common sense that you spend your money wisely. Why would you want to spend money on something which is less livable? So for Scotts Towers, you can see the excessive provisions for bay windows and the long balcony spaces and the open concept kitchen. For a family of 4 or family of 5, if you're cooking for them, the whole apartment, the whole condo is going to smell. So this begs the question again, is this livable? And if the family feels like this layout or design is inefficient, leading to a low livability, the local demand will be low. And usually when the local demand is low, it will lose money. Why? Because if you do not rely on local demand, what demand do you rely on? The external factors, which are your foreigners and your PRs. Then ask yourself, which demand is more sustainable? Which demand is more safe in the long run? The foreigners and the PRs, which are your external, or the local demand? Of course, the local demand. If anything happens to Singapore's market, who will be the first to leave? The locals or the foreigners and the PRs? Obviously the foreigners and the PRs, because they have less liability within the country itself. So the demand is not reliable or sustainable in the long run. So again, to recap, low livability equals low local demand. Low local demand equals to projects losing money. Here's another example. OUE Twin Peak. The 3-bedder comes in at a 1985 square feet for a 3-bedder. In the mass market today, that is catered to at least a 5-bedder or bigger. As you can see, this is Parktown Residence, which is launched earlier this year, and the 5-bedroom premium comes in at 1676 square feet. That just shows again the efficiency of the layout and how livable is this spaces. Because of the amount of size in OUE Twin Peak, you can cater for a family which is way bigger in the mass market today. And let's say I'm living in a mass market now, which is outside the CCR region. If I'm living in a 5-bedroom with a big family at 1676 square feet, and I want to upgrade to a CCR, but I have to downgrade to a 3-bedroom, my livability for my family decreases. That in return reduces the local demand for these CCR projects. So over here, another example at Starlight Suites at River Valley. You can see 2 balconies. Why would you need 2 balconies? And both of these balconies are very big in size. So you're paying for that and you're not paying for unusable space. Another thing is they have planter and bay windows. Why would you need so many bay windows, especially in the toilet? Why would you need a bay window in the toilet? So all these adds up. Your excessive balcony spaces, your excessive planter box, and your bay windows, you're paying for all of these spaces which are not usable. So for this 2-bedder, you're coming in at a size at 1259 square feet. Hey, in the mass market, that's probably a 4-bedder or a very decent sized 3-bedder. Probably a 3-bedroom premium. But over here, you're paying for a 2-bedroom. So the livability does not make sense. So that is the layout. But not only that, look at the project itself. Look at the number of foreigners are located within the project. So you can see about 67% of them are Singaporeans. The rest are all PRs, foreigners, or companies. So as long as you see that there's 30%, that is one sign that you can check whether this project is doing well or not. Because the likelihood of there being a local demand is slightly lower than the rest of the other projects. So you need to see. Another sign you can see, the unit mix. They have catered almost 71% of the project for 1-bedder. Only 13 3-bedders within the project. You can clearly see that this is not meant for a family or for local demand. It's clearly to suit the investors in mind. So now to answer the question, if this happens to the OCR or RCR region, will it still affect the project? Will you lose money? Let's take this project at Mayor Road, for example, an RCR project, Alto. You can see that, okay, majority of it is catered for families because why? There is no provision for 2-bedders and 1-bedder. It starts from 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms and above. So you can see, okay, maybe they are orientated to family. So that's a good sign. So now let's look at the layout and see whether it is livable. From this, you can see the 3-bedroom. What stands out? The odd balcony shape. And not only that, there are 2 balconies and a provision of bay windows and a long AC ledge, which are spaces that you will be paying for. Now look at the size of these 3 bedrooms, 1550 square feet and 1442 square feet. These are sizes that can cater or provide a 4-bedroom unit or even a 5-bedder, but you're catering for a 3-bedroom. Is the efficiency of space there? I don't think so. And that's why they lose money. You see, they can lose up to 3 million, 2 million, $1 million. Non-profitable transactions. A very big red flag. And look at the number of foreigners and PRs. They are more than 30% of it. So the demographic is not there. The local demand is not there. So now you add all these factors together, the low livability of the layout, the number of foreigners within the development, the local demand that is not there, you start to see the project do not so well. resulting in millions of dollars unprofitable. Here is another example. Sky Habitat at Bishan, an RCR project. You can see they've been losing money, where some people are lose almost $500,000 or $200,000, even $300,000. Now let's see why. Okay, actually the demographic is quite decent. They have at least 76% of Singaporeans. That means local demand could be there. Now let's look at the unit mix, which is also okay. You can see that 42% is catered to 3 bedders, 4 bedders is 13%, so at least more than 50% of the project is catering to families in mind. But why then do they still lose money? Now when you look deeper into the layout, you start to realize why. A 3-bedroom has 3 balconies, and some 3-bedders with 2 balconies. Why would you need 2 or 3 balconies? And these are spaces that they are paying for. So for the 3-bedders, they're coming in at 1711 square feet. Even some of the smaller ones are 1507 square feet, which are very big. In the other markets, it's actually catering to a 5-bedder or even for a 4-bedder premium plus study. So the efficiency of space is not there. Now let's compare to Parktown residence again, where the 5-bedder premium is coming in at a size of 1679 square feet, which is smaller than the Sky Habitat's 3-bedroom. But the Parktown can cater to a family which is bigger because of the 5 bedrooms, because the efficiency of space is there. So a big family who's looking for a new place to stay, would they look at Sky Habitat at Bishan, or would they look at Parktown Residence? High chance is at Parktown Residence because the livability for its big family is better for them. So they will not sacrifice their lifestyle just because of the location. So again, let's recap. The low livability equals to low local demand. Low local demand equals to project losing money. So the Singapore government is actually very smart because they realize that this is an issue. And that is where the efforts came in to help resolve the issue. Where you can see they refined the GFA, harmonization calculations, and the number of home improvement policies have been implemented to increase the livability of the projects and their layouts. So then this brings about another question. If these two major factors are resolved, will CCR profit? But first off, let's see the solution for these factors. Remember back then I said decentralization killed the CCR, but it's actually the necessary evil. You can see that decentralization actually helped to close the price gap between the CCR to the RCR and the CCR to the OCR, allowing what? Social advancement to occur, or at least higher chances of it happening. Another effort from the government is to increase the ABSD. So now it's at 60%. So this 60% ABSD definitely scared a lot of the foreigners away, and also made the developers think that they cannot rely based on external factors such as the foreigners and the PRs, and they need to cater for more local demand. So how did the government solve this? I've touched on it earlier briefly, the implementation of URA improvement policies and also appealing to the family, increasing the local demand. So you can see these are just some of the home improvement policies that the government has been implementing throughout the years. So as you can see, 2008 and 2014, they revised the GFA guidelines, making the layout more efficient. That means reducing the amount of bay windows, reducing the amount of planter boxes and the open terraces and balconies. They've also implemented bonus GFA schemes by introducing more indoor recreation within the project. So this is to target families to make it more livable in the project itself. So recently in 2022 is the harmonization of floor areas. So what this means is that the buyers will no longer have to pay for the EC ledgers and the RC ledgers. And the guidelines for dwelling units, creating a regulations as to how many 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms need to be within the project to cater for local families. And as you can see in this slide, the demographics of foreigners are slowly decreasing, while the Singaporeans are actually slowly increasing. What this means is that they're creating more local demand within the private market. So remember on this slide, I've overlaid the new launches and the indicative PSF on all the locations of the business nodes for the decentralization strategy. You can start to see that the Central Core Region PSF is starting to be more achievable. What this means is that there is higher chances for social advancement. So now people who want to upgrade from OCR to CCR or RCR to CCR becomes more achievable. There is no bottleneck because the price gap becomes smaller. So now you can see the indicative PSF for the central region is 2684 PSF all the way to 3380 PSF, which just shows how much decentralization has actually closed the gap between the RCR to the CCR and the OCR to the CCR. So that is why the decentralization strategy is the necessary evil in order to make the CCR have local demand again. So in this slide, you can see how the RCR slowly tries to close its gap between the CCR, when now the CCR average PSF is 3010 PSF, while the RCR's is 2730 PSF. So that's about 300 PSF difference. Is this now more achievable rather than 700 PSF or 1000 PSF difference? Not only did the solution narrow the price gap between the CCR, RCR, and OCR, it also improves the layout within the CCR. Here are some examples of 3-bedroom projects in the CCR. Back in 2005, you can see this 3-bedder is coming in at 1399 square feet, where the provision of bay windows and balconies are excessive. Then you start to see the layout slowly improve. So back in 2017 for multi-modern, this 3-bedder, you can see that there is no more bay windows, but there is still provisions of 2 balconies. Why would you need 2 balconies? And also the AC ledge back then is payable. That means it's not harmonized, so you're paying for the AC ledge. Now you see One Marina Garden, launched this year 2025. See the 3-bedder comes in at 1012 square feet. And the efficiency of the layout. They can manage to squeeze a 3-bedder in a 102 square feet. Is it because they're sacrificing something? No, it's because the balcony spaces is reduced to 1 and the AC ledge is no longer counted. That means they do not pay for the AC ledge. Maybe the living room is a bit smaller, but the efficiency and livability there is still there, and you're paying at a lower price because you're no longer paying for excessive balconies, bay windows, and also AC ledges. So now let's take Avenir, a condo development in the CCR, River Valley. You can see that the 3-bedder comes in at 1141 square feet. That's actually comparable to the other projects, other mass projects in the OCR areas. That means the livability is not sacrificed. The 2-bedders also comes in at 807 square feet. This is also quite similar to the RCR and also OCR projects. And you can see the livability of the layout. There is no excessive bay windows, no excessive balconies. Everything is efficiently planned for livability in mind. Then you look at the unit mix. You can see that more than 50% comprises of the 3 bedrooms and the 4 bedrooms. Having said that, that comes to mind that they are prioritizing over local families. And that's why you can see this project did well and earned money. 1.4 million in profit, $500,000 in profit, $400,000 in profit. So then you ask yourself again, will CCR mean that I'll lose money? I just given you an example where CCR helps you earn money, almost up to $1.5 million. And if you keep yourself updated in the real estate market, do you realize that the projects that earn the most profits are located in where? The CCR. Here, Yongan Park, a 4-bedder, received $6.5 million in profit. Then another one this year, Nasim Lodge, a whopping $11.5 million in profit. Another 4-bedder in Orchard, Boulevard 88, $3 million in profit. And another one at Grange Residence, $5.8 million in profit. And these are all located in the CCR. So who says CCR confirm lose money? But in actual fact, CCRs are actually the ones with the most amount of profitable transactions. You just need to choose the right project. So I hope this gives you a clearer perspective as to why CCR will actually make you lose money and help you identify all the pitfalls and faults as to actually what is the reason behind this. With this, you have a clearer understanding as to why these CCR projects are making you lose money. And then you start to realize that as long as you have these 2 major factors, but be it whether in the CCR or the RCR or the OCR, as long as you have these 2 major factors affecting your project, you are ultimately bound to lose money. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and I'll see you in the next one.